Welcome back to our channel.
I'm Mary.
I'm Dayo.
And in this video, we'll be showing you how we transformed and finished our living room and our master bedroom fireplace. We will also be talking to you about the tools and the materials that we used and the process and the technique, and also the things that we learned along the way to really bring this to life.
Yes, babe, we will be doing that. Over to you.
Thank you. So when you are wanting to build a fireplace, you need to consider the type of the fireplace you'll be doing and the size of it. In our case, of course, we'll be focusing on an electrical fireplace. That's what we did for both the family room and in our master bedroom here. And we're actually shooting in our master bedroom because, funny enough, when we got this idea, we wanted to start it in our room, just in case it didn't turn out perfectly and it didn't work out the way we wanted it to work out. At least it was in our room, right? So we kind of used the one in here as a practice. And so the first thing you want to think about when you're building that fireplace is what size do you want your fireplace to be? So for us, our master bedroom was a 48-inch electric fireplace and our family room was a 72-inch electric fireplace. Some other things you want to consider is the fireplaces. Are they going to be plug-in or do they need to be hardwired? And if you're using a gas fireplace instead, do you have a gas line ran, and do you have all of the proper ventilation and things that need to be there in order for that to function properly? So that's one of the things that you need to think about for sure going into the project, because that's going to determine the size of the frame that you need to build out for your fireplace. Because in order for you to have this, you have to first build out the structure. So the structure is usually built out of 2x4s, and Dayo will link a couple of videos that show you how to build a fireplace frame if you're interested in that. Funny enough, we've actually done one ourselves in one of our other properties, but it doesn't take long at all. I think it took us just like an entire Saturday, and that included buying the material, building the frame, and actually finishing out the fireplace in shiplap, as well as hanging up the television and all that. So if you are a weekend warrior like we are and you have some time on your hands, it's definitely going to take you no time at all to do. Whereas if you're building a new construction home like we did in this particular house, that's something that your framer is going to do as part of your framing. This one is starting from 16 and it's 17 tall. I can send you the exact fireplaces too. What they will need to know is the dimensions of the fireplace itself. And the reason for that is that's going to determine the size of the box, what they need to leave out for where the fireplace is actually going to fit into. And if you want to recess a television above your fireplace, they're also going to need the dimensions of the television, because that will determine how much space, like we have in our living room, they need to recess back on top of that as well. And then overall, that determines how wide your fireplace needs to be. You can't be, building a 50-inch wide fireplace if the actual fireplace itself is 72 inches wide, right? So you need to take all of that into consideration. All right, so after your fireplace is framed, the next thing that is going to happen is you're going to need to have drywall on that fireplace. So you can either use drywall or you can use cement board. Both of them are going to function in the same manner. Cement board is supposed to be a little bit stronger for a fireplace, but most of the time, whenever the home is being completed, they tend to drywall the wall. So if they already put up drywall on your wall, no worries at all. On your fireplace, no worries at all. That still functions just fine. So the drywall goes up, they're going to tape the joints, and then they're going to make sure to kind of put the drywall mud over all the joints, make sure everything is smooth. At that point is when you want to do your concrete finish on your fireplace. If the drywall guys accidentally spray texture on your fireplace like ours did, we told them over and over not to texture the fireplace, but they did anyway. That's okay. Don't go through the trouble of scraping off the texture, because Planipatch is that concrete finishing to it, and it's thick. it'll cover whatever finish they've put on there just fine. You won't have to worry about it at all. All right, so if you have an existing fireplace already, let's say you have brick on it and you still want to achieve this look, that is possible. We've actually seen a video of someone, and Dayo will link that as well, who used Featherfinish to cover the brick fireplace first. So that kind of filled in the joints between the bricks. And then he came back with Planipatch and worked Planipatch over it to achieve that concrete look. So the concrete look, if that's something that you're really interested in and you already have a fireplace, still very doable. If you're starting from scratch and you need to build the frame for it, all of that still very doable at whatever stage that you're in. So this idea really came from the fact that when we were designing the fireplace, I wanted something that had a really natural look and a natural texture to it. And I wanted it to look like either concrete or a solid form of slate stone. I don't know, just something that looked like one structure. And lately, a lot of the modern fireplaces, they have the tile finishing on the exterior, which is great. Tile is a strong, durable material. But the problem for me is I do not like grout lines. Even my flooring guys, every time they lay floor, I'm standing over them like, make sure that grout line is minimal. I try to make sure I only pick rectified tile so that the grout lines are minimal. But even with the rectified tiles, the grout line was still more than I wanted it to be. So I started to think about, what could I do? I want a concrete look. So how can I make this concrete fireplace by myself? And so that's what really got us started on this journey. And that's why we ultimately went with this finish. Now, there were 3 options that we looked at to be able to achieve this. We saw one on a video on YouTube. I believe the channel is called Welcome to the Woods. She used a material from concrete fireplace finishing company of some sort. And if you Google concrete fireplace, you will see a lot of products come up that you can buy and that you can utilize. A lot of those products come in a buy a kit and you'll get everything you need in one step deal. The reason I didn't utilize that was because I can't remember how many square feet of material the kit came with, but I believe the kit was $200 and something, and it just, for the living room fireplace alone, I would need a couple of those kits. So that cost was going to add up very quickly, even outside of the manual labor we were already going to have to do on it. So I didn't go that route. Now that company, is it called Cara Color or something like that? We'll link that right above my head, but we did buy the color of the concrete that she used in her video. And I wanted to see how that would look if I used another compound, another cement compound. The second option was using Planipatch. So Planipatch, you can purchase that from any like Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, things like that. They have it, and it comes anywhere from $10 to $20 a bag, depending on how big the bag is. And so we purchased the big bags, and that was another option as well. And then the third option was something called Featherfinish, and I believe either Lowe's or Home Depot carries that. And we bought 3 of these things. So we bought the Cara Color, we bought the Planipatch, and we bought the Featherfinish. And we then did little samples on a board to see which one we liked. So I did the Planipatch mixed with the Cara Color Gray. We also did the Featherfinish mixed with the Cara Color Gray. We did the Planipatch by itself, and we did the Featherfinish by itself. So we had 4 samples that we were looking at to see which color, which texture would we like the best. And so we looked at it at home and we decided we're going to bring it into the home we were building and put it against the wall there to see which one we liked best. So when we did that, even at home, we realized we were leaning more towards the Planipatch version. And then when we came into the home, this home when we were building it, that completely solidified it. The Planipatch one gave the color, gave the texture that we were looking for. We'll try to find a picture of some of those samples, but the colors differed a little bit. We didn't want something too dark. We didn't want something too light. One of them looked really unrealistic, in my opinion, in regards to what concrete would look like. So Planipatch really gave us the best option. And truthfully, was probably the most price efficient option, because you can get these big bags of Planipatch for like $20, and that will take you a great deal of the way in actually completing your fireplace. All right, so I keep mentioning Home Depot and Lowe's over and over again in all of these videos, guys. I promise these are true and honest opinions regarding the things we've purchased and what we've done over this process. They are not sponsoring this video. Come in and be like, who's the sponsor?
Babe, who's the sponsor? Swap.
So yes, Lowe's and Home Depot can sponsor me any day though, but they're not sponsoring this video. This is just our true and honest feedback with everything that we've done so far. So when you're ready to start working on your fireplace, one of the biggest things you want to do first of all before you do anything is protect your walls, because at this point you probably already, if it's a new home you're building, you probably already have the rest of your drywall up. And if it's your existing home, you don't want to mess up your walls, the rest of the walls that you're not working on, of course. So I do recommend getting some of that painter's paper, that big brown roll of paper. Sometimes the tile guys use that as well. They use that to cover the floor after they do their tile to protect it. And what you want to do is cover around the bottom of your fireplace. You also want to cover the side of the walls of your fireplace and the ceiling as well. So measure at least, I would say, 18 to 36 inches out from all the directions of your fireplace and cover that up. Use blue tape along the lines of the fireplace. So at the very edge, you want to put blue tape on here first, all around the fireplace, the floor, the top, the other side, and then put the brown paper starting after the blue tape. Use more blue tape to adhere all of that. And the reason for that is it's going to keep your walls clean. You're not going to have to start trying to scrape Planipatch off your walls afterwards. You're not going to damage your floors if you already have floor. When we did this, we in some of the videos, we didn't have flooring yet. And in other parts, depending on what step we were in, our flooring had already gone in. So we needed to be really careful with that, not to damage it. After deciding we were gonna do the Planipatch, I really began to research, okay, I'd want to make sure, I don't know, a lot of you guys probably look at your driveway, your concrete driveways, or even your foundation, and you know, some months or some years after it's poured, you begin to see cracks, right? So I was really concerned about making sure that whatever we applied was going to be sturdy and I wasn't going to be seeing cracks or it wasn't going to be falling apart. So I did some research and I found that we could use a primer. So we purchased this primer called Primer T, and basically it's a primer that you would put under the product before you ever put the Planipatch on. So this was the first thing that we put on the wall. So when our fireplace wall was in the drywall phase, after they had taped it and put drywall mud, we came in, just dusted it off, make sure there wasn't any excess dust, wiped it off, and then we used this primer. We applied it with a roller brush. So some of you, this is that pink stuff that a lot of you have seen in our Instagram or some other pictures and videos you might have run across. So this is, it comes out pink, and you roll it on the wall, and it does require 2 hours to dry. So we did that on this wall first in our bedroom, and we needed to wait 2 hours for it to dry. And you know, normal couples would probably go grab lunch. Instead, we took the time to do the DIY wall for our master bedroom, which the accent wall, all in all, I believe cost us $97 actually. So we planned that we were gonna do it. So we came in with the wood already. We took our measurements. If you're interested in seeing how we did that master bedroom accent wall or any accent wall in our home, please go ahead and drop a comment, leave a message, let us know, and we'll be sure to share that information. So now it's been 2 hours and our wall is dry with the pink primer that we put on, which once again was this product here. Now we needed to go ahead and actually start to mix our Planipatch. In all of the research we had done, it said to mix the Planipatch to peanut butter consistency. They didn't actually give us a 1 cup of Planipatch to 2 cup of water ratio, and that kind of bothered me a little bit. But I will say, when I started working with the product, I realized why they did not do that, because it is very, very difficult to determine how much Planipatch versus how much water to mix. But I will give you some tips and tricks. So one of the things we initially started off doing, based on the videos we had seen, was after we put our Planipatch in, during our first mix, we put our Planipatch in a bucket, because that's what we had seen someone else do, and they added some water, and they used one of these apparatus here. So this is a mixer that you can attach to the head of your drill, and then when you turn your drill on, it'll spin around and mix the compound for you in your bucket. So our first mixture of the Planipatch, this is what we did. Now, it practically mixed like a third of a bucket. The compound, the water, and everything we did mixed practically like a third of a bucket. I will say we wasted so much of that on that first mixture. That was the biggest mistake we made. Tip number 1, mix in small batches. Only mix what you're going to be able to use within the next 5 to 10 minutes, because the compound dries extremely fast. That doesn't even, like, I can't stress enough how fast it dries. I heard people say it dries fast, but it dries extremely fast. So what we ended up doing in the following mixtures, this just didn't quite work out for us, and maybe we bought a cheaper mix head. I know there are more expensive mixing heads, so I don't know, but we ended up just chucking this thing to the side. What we ended up actually doing was, I'm gonna grab something here to quickly show you. We ended up using one of these. So just your, drywall taping knife, or drywall mud spatula, whatever they're called. You can grab one of these, and then we grabbed a bucket, just a small, when I say bucket, not a big, huge bucket, but I'll just show you something. We grabbed the bucket like this size, and that made it so much easier to mix, because we would put like two scoops full of Planipatch on this thing. So we actually use this to scoop the Planipatch into my bucket, and then I just used my hand to like pour 2 or 3 hand scoops of water, and then I would use this to mix it around until it was the consistency that we wanted. So peanut butter consistency is what you're going for. I would even argue to say a little thinner than peanut butter consistency. So maybe like caramel or fruit dip, something like that, where it can hold its own in a container, but it also has some flow to it, because that gives you more time to work with the product so that it doesn't dry so quickly on you whenever you're trying to put that on your wall. We mixed in a bucket of that size, and we would divide it into 2. Dayo was on a scaffold working on the top, and I was on the lower part of the wall, because I'm scared of heights, and applying that on the wall. So that's how we kind of did our division of labor there. So technique in regards to application, some people say put it in an X. Honestly, I just say work the product around in different directions. And the reason for that is just so there are no gaps, because just like in concrete and things, you can end up with gaps, you can end up with air bubbles. So try to work it in different directions. So tip number 2 is try to keep it as smooth as possible as you're applying this to the wall. You don't want to have any sharp, hard lines, which is something you can run into when you stop in an area and you come and you want to continue. If you have a sharp, hard line, try to just smoothen it out as much as you can. After we had done this for a while, we also realized that it was easier for us to smoothen it out as we went. And some of the videos we watched, they actually waited till they completed the entire wall and then try to do some light sanding to smooth it out. But we realized that the compound was drying so fast that it took a lot more work to try to sand it down later, especially on those hard ridges, that it was much easier to smoothen it out as we went along. So speaking of smoothing it out, we used this here. It's called a rubber float. So we actually purchased this rubber float, again, your hardware stores. And what we did was we kept this thing in water face down because this is the part you're using the entire time. So for example, let's say I applied it on the wall and it wasn't, Dayo would then come behind me with this and just kind of lightly smoothen it out. So we learned this trick while we were doing the fireplace in the family room, because when we did this one here in our bedroom, we found that while applying it, we ended up with some harsh lines, and it really took a lot of work to sand it down. So by the time we got to the family room fireplace, we did start to use this float where we would apply all of the mixture on the wall, and as it started to dry a little bit, we would dip this in water, have it a little moist, and then kind of use it to smoothen it out a little bit. Another trick we also used, because after a while the concrete started to dry on this and it wasn't always convenient to stop and wash it or clean it. So we also used grout sponges. So wet the grout sponge, squeeze it out, and just lightly use it to go over the Planipatch while it's still malleable, and use it to smoothen it out a little bit so that you're not ending up with those harsh lines. And then sometimes the Planipatch, depend on how it was stored, sometimes you get these weird bubbles in it, and this really helps to help smoothing that out so that you don't get that bubbling effect behind the Planipatch due to it's like little poofs of dry Planipatch. Maybe it's just not mixing it well, but whatever. This will help you get rid of that. All right, so we applied all the Planipatch from, I started from bottom up, Dayo was working top down, applied it to the edges as well. And then after that, we let that dry. So when that dried, we came in, took a look at it. Actually, we didn't intentionally let it dry. It was already dry because we tried to smoothen it out. So we ended up realizing that we actually needed a sander to smooth out some of those hard ridges, and especially in our bedroom here. So we ended up grabbing our sander. Personally, Dayo used a regular sander, a regular electric sander, like one of the square heads. I really like circular sanders, and that's just because the head oscillates on its own, so I feel like I'm doing less work. All I have to do is place my hand on it and it'll just kind of like turn around on its own and shift on its own. Using the sander, we sanded down all of our like really harsh lines or thick ridges that we didn't want to give it that smooth look. While we were sanding it, we actually realized, oh, like sanding it was bringing out more character, and it was just making it look really pretty. So it brought out some lighter patches, some darker patches. So we decided, you know what? We're gonna give this thing a sanded finished look instead of just having a solid block like we had seen in some of the other videos. Like, we realized it having pattern added so much character to it. So after we sanded it down, it generated a lot of dust. And we didn't want to just apply another coat with that dust trapped on it. So we actually used a compound cleaning product. We used this towel and stone cleaner. You just add a little bit of it into some water, and that in addition to a grout sponge. So we just dipped the grout sponge in the bucket and then squeeze out all the water and used it to wipe down the fireplace whenever we were done. So now we were ready for our second coat, and we already knew all the tips and tricks and what we needed to do better, and this went by so much faster. So again, we were doing our mixtures in just a little plate or a little bucket, just enough for us to be able to complete within the next 5 to 10 minutes so it wouldn't dry on us. And the second coat went by so much faster. So we're able to coat everything, and when that dried, we took our sander again, sanded everything down. The sanding part, how much sanding you do is really just dependent on what you want it to look like. A lot of people we watched did not do any sanding at all, and they just wanted that solid block finished look, but we wanted something that had a lot of character to it, so we did do some sanding on our end. Let me rewind. I will say be careful while you're sanding, pay attention, because you might notice some of the spots coming through, the drywall coming through. So whenever you're doing your second coat, tip number 3, pay attention so that anywhere that you see is thin, make sure to apply a good coat while you're doing that second coat so that way it's nice and covered. Otherwise, if you plan to sand while you're sanding, if it's a thin area, you'll end up sanding away most of that Planipatch, and you don't want to do that. So be sure after your first coat, take a look, see if you notice any areas that were not covered properly. When you're doing the second coat, be sure to cover those areas bountifully. And then next, so after we cleaned the second coat that we had applied, so second coat, sand, and then you want to clean. After cleaning, we let that dry completely. We just followed the directions on the cleaning product for how long it needed to dry. And then we were ready to put our sealant. So if you've ever worked with compounds before, such as concrete or Planipatch, you know that greases can leave a permanent residue on that compound that you may not be able to take away. So for us, it was important that we seal the product because we have small children that may be running around and put their hands on the wall, and even us, right? No one's perfect. But even though I wanted to apply a sealant, I also knew that I didn't want a sealant that would be shiny to the point where it made the stone look unnatural or unrealistic. So I ended up choosing this matte this matte sealant for the fireplace. So purchased this again from either Home Depot or Lowe's, and applied multiple coats of this to the wall. I want to say from top to bottom, we did about 3 coats of this, applying it to the wall. And then next, after you've taken down all of the wall protection that you had, to really get that finished look after you've applied your sealant to your fireplace, when you're all done, be sure to apply a new piece of blue tape right against your concrete wall that you finished, and then another piece right here against the wall. And it's going to create a little gap in here, and so that gap you're going to fill it in with caulk. So just so it gives you that straight, clean, finished look. You can also, if you are working on your home and you still have painters in the house, your painters can also do that for you. We actually didn't end up caulking it ourselves because at that time our room still needed to be painted. So the painter went ahead and did the caulking when he caulked the floors. All of the products that we used and all of the items, we will go ahead and put pictures of them and link as much of them as we can. If there's anything that we missed, please leave a comment and let us know. If you have any additional questions or there was something that you just were not very sure of, please leave a comment, let us know. We truly appreciate you watching up until this point. So if you're still watching, thank you very much. You are awesome. And for those of you that do not know, if you're watching this on your television, you can like this video on your television. You don't have to watch from your phone to like the video. And also, if this is our first video that you're seeing and you want to see more of us, please check out the rest of our other videos. Take a look at our empty house tour. Take a look on our how to purchase land video. And if there are just additional videos that you want to see or additional questions, please let us know in the comments. We truly appreciate all of your feedback. Thank you so much for your time. Joy fam. I'm just kidding.